Hi, everyone. Welcome to this call on reality check. I'm delighted to have you join me. I'm Tom Stone, and looking forward to sharing this information with you. This reality check call is an additional call that I'm purposefully making a video of so I can add it into my sequence of lessons of a new version of what's called the Freedom Practice. Freedom Practice is turning out to be an app that is both on the computer and on mobile devices. And the computer version is pretty well there. And so I'm making it available in two sections. A first section that's free with some free classes, including this one. And then a second section where people can pay to do an upgrade and get the rest of the course. There's actually a total of 10 lessons in all. 10, we could say 11 with this one that we're doing today, because this is number 2.1, reality check. And the reason for this reality check is that at the basis of people's ability to do the things that they want is an ability to be able to act on their intuition. As you'll see in the presentation in a moment, the people who have been very successful in their life, as you could see from the lead-in of my email that I just sent out earlier, Steve Jobs was able to create the Apple computer, obviously, and it's become the biggest company in the world. And he did that with his ability to trust and act on his intuition at about 66% of the influence of the things that influence his decisions. Not 100%, but 66%. So that's pretty incredible. What that means is that there's the possibility that everyone has some kind of inner greatness inside of them, but the vast majority of people have a sense that that's there, but they don't know how to access it and really fully express it. So that's what this call is about today, is about what it is that causes this inability for most people to access and utilize their inner greatness, their intuition, and how to overcome that and actually be able to do that. So that's exactly what our topic is for today. So I'm going to see if I can do a screen share and get that web page up and going. Let's see where it is. As this is a web page, I'm just going to kind of scroll down it, and I'll use it as a sort of prompt for me to remember what I'm going to say. And so here we go. So I'm glad you have your video on, because I want to get a little bit of interaction going here. So do you sometimes have an intuition and for some reason you don't follow it, and then later on you found out that your intuition was just spot on and you really regret not following it? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. Very good. And I've asked this question of hundreds of people at my seminars, and pretty much everybody raises their hand. It's a very common experience. So why is this so common? When we're very young, we get emotionally overwhelmed lots of times. Nobody likes it. Everybody reacts to this by trying to get as far away from the emotional pain as possible. So emotions have both content and energy. The content is the name of the emotion, the thoughts and memories about what happened. And the energy is the sensation that we feel in or around our body. And there are two kinds of energy patterns, as shown on this chart. This is a types of emotions chart. So there are basically two types of emotions, useful and not useful. And the distinction useful, not useful is a much better distinction than the like good or bad or anything like that. On the useful side, over here on the left, you can see that the useful emotions are energizing, empowering, and they are things like love, compassion, happiness, joy. Even fear can be useful. If you're about to cross the street and you don't see it, there's one of these new like Tesla electric cars coming and you can't hear it, but you're about to step out in the street and you see it at the last minute and you jump back. That's a good, useful version of fear. And if we're using fear to protect ourselves, That's a useful version. And many other emotions that we might consider negative can, in fact, sometimes be of value. On the right side, we have the unresolved and not useful emotions, which are disruptive and depleting. And as you can see with the two long arrows, we have two categories of them. We have the painful internal kind and the reactive external kind. And I'll explain a little bit about that. The painful internal ones are like what I got when I got shot. It was a traumatic, painful experience. So it was trauma, emotional pain, can include things like heartbreak, resentment, grief, all kinds of things. And you can see with the little image on the right of the first circle, a little red dot at about the solar plexus level, and the word in underneath the person standing there. And that's because these techniques tend to be localized and sort of concentrated like a tight knot or ball of energy held inside. They don't necessarily have to be in the solar plexus, it can be anywhere, but toward the center of the body is very common. And we use a technique called the in technique to resolve them. We used to have some other names for them, but I spent about 6 years in China, and the other names were too complicated to translate into Mandarin. So we changed it to simple names like in and out. And you can see this larger circle on the right has the reactive external emotions in it, including upsets and fears. The upsets occur when we have an expectation that doesn't get met. We want something to happen in a particular way, our way. And when it doesn't, then we get upset, we get angry, disappointed, frustrated, sad, depressed, etc. It goes on and on. When we project a possible negative outcome onto the future, which so many people are very commonly prone to do, we create things like worry, fear, anxiety, panic attacks, stuff like that. And you can see on the right, there's an image with a sort of cloud of energy all around it. And this is a completely different type of energy pattern than we have with the in technique energies. This is a kind of, the energy moves out from the body into the space around you and it sort of surrounds and engulfs you. And we use something called the out technique energy to resolve that. Now, the underlying cause of both of these two databases of unresolved, incomplete experiences are the phenomena of suppression and avoidance. And this conditioning causes the accumulation of the incomplete experiences of emotional pain. And the energies are held inside of us like a tight knot or ball of energy, as I mentioned. But we suppress these energies so well that we can't feel the pain anymore. We think they're gone, but they're not. And these residual energies cause our emotional pain-based thoughts, but we don't even know that this is happening. Now, on the other side, the right-hand side here, where we have our expectations and reactions, this conditioning is a projection of positive and negative outcomes onto the future. It's not about being present. It's about being wrapped up in stories that are made up in our mind. And they're not perceptions of things that actually exist. They only exist in our mind. They cause us to react with upsets and fears, and they're the cause of our ego-based thoughts. But again, we don't even know that this is happening. Now, how do we make our decisions? There are 4 different kinds of thoughts that influence our decisions: practical thoughts, intuitive thoughts, ego-based thoughts, and emotional pain-based thoughts. The practical and intuitive thoughts are useful to us. The ego-based and emotionally pain-based thoughts are not useful and lead to making costly mistakes. The ego-based and emotional pain-based thoughts are held inside of us. We call this our inner emotional landscape. I did a little testing, muscle testing, to determine like what's the average level of reactive emotions and trauma emotional pain causing ego-based and emotionally pain-based thoughts, and what are the levels of practical thoughts and intuitive thoughts as a general sort of range within which these things take place. So as you can see on the left of this chart, we have decisions are influenced by and then a list of the four kinds of thoughts: practical thoughts, intuitive thoughts, ego-based thoughts, and emotional pain-based thoughts. Now, the optimal situation is where 100% of the thoughts are practical or intuitive, and 0% of the influence of our thoughts are ego-based or emotionally pain-based. Now, as you can see, as I've just tested this in the last days, March of 2023, the range of practical thoughts is typically high for pretty much everybody. It's in a range somewhere between 86 to 92. There are exceptions, of course, higher and lower, but that's the general range. And intuitive thoughts tend to be quite low, 14 to 20. Now, why is that? That's because there's a huge presence of ego-based thoughts, 47 to 58% influencing our thoughts, influencing our decisions, and 42 to 59% of emotional pain-based thoughts, which are rooted in traumas and emotional pain, also influencing our decisions. So the reason the intuitive thoughts number is low is not because we don't have lots of intuitive thoughts, but mainly because they're kind of covered up, if you will, by the ego-based and emotional pain-based thoughts. Now, Steve Jobs had this beautiful quote about intuition. He said, "Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." And I took the liberty, after he had passed away, to muzzle test what were Steve Jobs' influence numbers at the peak of his life. And what I got was that his practical thoughts were very high, 98. His intuitive thoughts, interestingly enough, were just 66. So it didn't take being at 100% intuitive thinking in order for him to create the biggest company in the world, just 66%. And if we look at the level of ego-based thoughts, 14, emotional pain-based thoughts, 15, he still had some of that stuff, but he managed to do pretty well, other than getting ill and dying younger than he probably needed to. Obviously, everything's perfect in some way. And the next person I tested was Oprah Winfrey, who, as I'm sure you know, is a famous talk show host. And she said, "Follow your instincts. That's where true wisdom manifests itself." And if we take a look at her chart, I didn't call her up and ask for permission to muscle test for her, but I checked to see if it was okay and got it was okay. So at the peaks of her life, she was also very high with practical thoughts, 96%, very, very high intuitively, 78% intuition. It's extremely high. One of the highest I've seen of anyone who has not yet done the freedom practice. And then 13% influence for ego-based thoughts and 12% for traumas and emotional pain. Similarly, with Albert Einstein, he said the only real valuable thing is intuition. So all of these people and many, many others who are very successful, they all know that being able to follow your intuition is a key component to being able to manifest the life that you really want. So in Einstein, at his peaks, he had 97% practical, 85% intuitive. That's like the highest I've ever seen with anybody who's not done this work. 6% influence of reactive emotions, 12% from trauma and emotional pain. So the interesting thing about this is that most famous people have quotes about following their intuition being a key component to being able to have the life that they want. And the interesting thing is that there's very little information from these people about how you can do it too. So they seem to somehow come upon the ability to do it themselves, but the ability to actually train other people, there's not a lot of information there. So they all say this was a key to their major key to their success. But although they know how to do it themselves, as I mentioned, not much guidance provided for others to learn how to do it too. So the freedom practice is unique in that it does provide a systematic methodology of cleaning up your inner emotional landscape. And you can learn to do it easily, and you can learn to do it by yourself. And when you clean up your inner emotional landscape, most people don't even know that they have an inner emotional landscape. And it's filled with landmines that are causing lots and lots of ego and emotionally pain-based thoughts. And these thoughts then cause you to make lots of costly mistakes. Just imagine what a huge difference in your life improving your ability to access and follow your intuition would make. If you could get your intuition level to 66%, like Steve Jobs, or you might even be able to get it even higher. Now, when you practice the freedom practice regularly, it provides a unique solution to the problem of accumulation of unresolved emotional pain. We use the pure awareness techniques to clean up our inner emotional landscape. And as we do that, the ego and emotionally pain-based thoughts become less and less. Intuitive thoughts just naturally become more because they're actually already there. They just get less and less covered up. You do the freedom practice daily. And to make the fastest progress with the freedom practice, it's great to do it like for about 20 or 30 minutes first thing in the morning or at some regular time during the day. Then as you go through the day, after a few weeks, you spontaneously start to notice ego and emotionally pain-based thoughts coming up during the day because you've actually been having all four kinds of thoughts all day long, every day of your life. But you're so familiar with the ego and emotionally pain-based thoughts that you just have a tendency to think they're kind of normal. When you do notice them, you stop what you're doing, if possible, and you do the freedom practice right then. You use the tools and skills that you'll learn in this training to find and resolve the previously hidden energies at the basis of your ego and emotionally pain-based thoughts. The beauty of doing this is that it systematically gets rid of the energy patterns that are causing these kinds of thoughts. And when they're gone, they really don't come back. Because both the in and out technique energies are so well suppressed, you don't know that they're negatively influencing your decisions. Now, why will you want your own personalized decision influences assessment? Your DIA provides you with a reality check, that's where the reality check comes from for this class, on how cluttered or clean your inner emotional landscape is. And by updating your DIA periodically, you'll be able to see your progress. And just becoming aware of how cluttered your inner emotional landscape is can be a huge inspiration to do the freedom practice every time you can, so that you can become someone who trusts and acts on your intuition like Steve Jobs or Albert Einstein or any of these great people. So perhaps you're destined to become a great person. Just get rid of the clutter and let's see what happens. So the options are some people like to put their toe in the water before diving in, and others like to just go for it. So the first option would be just get your DIA now and making it available for just $10 so you can see how much cleaning up of your inner emotional landscape is needed. And you can upgrade by registering for section 2 of this training for only $150. You get your DIA as part of the package and lessons 3 through 10. Option 3 is to do nothing and stay stuck where you are, and you won't change by wishing or deciding you're going to do that. Intellectually deciding you're going to change is not the same thing as dealing with energy. It won't work like that. Unless you remove the energies at the basis of your ego and emotionally pain-based thoughts, you keep getting what you've been getting. So what would you like to do? You can get your personal DIA now by, well, you probably can't click on this web page unless you happen to copy the URL and write it down. But that's one option. The second option would be, and I'm going to provide you with links. I'll send them out because I have your emails. I'll send them out to you. You can register for section 2 of the training for $150. You'll get your DIA as part of the package and lessons 3 through 10. Yeah, so I want to tell you about 5 group coaching programs now. Each one is designed to help you awaken your inner greatness. And these are things that you would take first the freedom practice to get the basics if you haven't had them. Most of you, I think, on the call have, but people who are watching it from the video may not have had them. So the first one is extraordinary coach training. Great coaching comes from great people, not from just learning how to do coaching techniques well. This program is designed to find and remove any hidden barriers to awakening that inner greatness that you know is in there, just waiting for you to access it and live it fully. Become one of the best coaches in the world. We also have a group coaching program called PTSD Help for Nurses. Thousands of nurses have developed burnout and PTSD due to the super stressful challenges of the pandemic. Are you one of them? Now there's a new way to actually cure your PTSD that you can learn from someone who has actually done that, which is me. You'll be amazed that it's far easier than you think. The medical and psychological community thinks that PTSD is incurable, but it's not true. How can you get help from somebody if they believe that you're incurable? I cured myself of PTSD completely and haven't had a PTSD symptom in 30 years. Learn it from someone who's actually done it. True awakening. Some people have had a spontaneous awakening and since then have been living in a continuous experience of wholeness. People like Eckhart Tolle, maybe Sadhguru, a number of different people, but they typically don't fully understand how they got there. And they can't tell you how you can get there. I had an awakening too that has never gone away back in 1997, but I did it consciously and I know how to guide you to live from pure awareness all the time, permanently. Something is missing from most spiritual development programs, and I know exactly what that is and how you can finally have it. Then we have the grief relief program. People think that grieving has to take a long time and you must go through many stages that come out of the grief in order to come out of the grief. But it's not true. You can eliminate the primary pain of loss typically within the first month of group coaching sessions. Often the pain can be gone after the very first session. I had two daughters, and one of them unfortunately tragically died. And when I got the news, I was in Switzerland. I got the news from the US, and it took me about 2 hours. I just sat and did the pure awareness techniques on the pain of the loss. And basically, after that, I can only feel my love for my daughter. I didn't have any ongoing residual pain. And the last one here is extraordinary relationships. And this is for any relationship to be successful. You have to gain a state in which you don't need anything from anyone. You have to be able to stop dating your parents, we could say. You have to be able to love without attachment. In this unique group coaching program, amazingly enough, you can learn how to develop a true state of self-sufficiency, not needing anything from anyone. And this is really the only way to have relationships that truly work. So each of these coaching programs starts with the foundational training called the Freedom Practice, which is what we're talking about. This is one of the lessons in it. And the first few lessons are free so that you can get some of the basics and see if you want to continue. Then you take section 2 of the Freedom Practice. And when you finish that class, you can continue on with the group coaching program of your choice. The group coaching happens once per week, but at 2 times to accommodate different time zones. The cost varies for each program, and we'll help you determine what's the best program for you. Just email me, and I'll get back to you and help you get what we think will best meet your needs. So I'm looking forward to get acquainted, and you can email me at tomstonehsc@gmail.com. You might want to copy that link or write it down and drop me a note, and then we can get on a Zoom call, private Zoom call, and get acquainted. So basically, that's it. I'm going to stop the screen share. And there we are. So any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them. just unmute yourself and ask away. I want to thank you all very much for joining this class. I'll be posting the class as well as the information about the details of these group coaching programs. And you'll have lots of options. You can just get a DIA. As I said, you can do nothing. You can get the Extraordinary Coach Training Program. You can get the full freedom practice, including both first and second sections. All sorts of options for you. And do look forward to having a call either to get caught up, like with Desi, it's been a while, and otherwise with Lauren, we'll get better acquainted. And yeah, be delighted to have you in the family, on the team, as we can think of it. And so again, thank you so much for joining me, and wishing you the best of being able to access and fully live your inner greatness all the time. So take care. Bye-bye.